overflowing senses, heightened awareness. Hi guys, and welcome to Piano and Keyboard Artist, where we discuss the artists related to pianos, keyboards, and synthesizers. And here is a video that I've been meaning to make for a long time, and I've finally decided to produce this video. And in this video, we're going to talk about Martin Gore and his vibrato voice. Now, before we jump into this, I think if you've been with me from the start, you will know what a huge Depeche Mode fan I am. And indeed, Martin is probably, I don't want to pick sides, but he's probably my favorite Depeche Mode member. I absolutely love his voice, and I think this man is responsible to the soundtrack to our lives. So everything I'm going to say in here now is really just coming from a place of love. Although this video has never been a priority, it's just something I've always wanted to talk about. And what really sort of pushed this far up on my agenda is not the fact that it's only a very easy video to produce, but also the fact that this is a subject I've heard a lot from the Depeche Mode community here on my YouTube channel, my Facebook group, and on other communities, is this discussion about Martin's voice, and mainly the so-called overuse of his vibrato. In fact, on my own Facebook group, the Vaughn George Facebook group recently, a similar discussion started, about this. So I thought, let's address that. And in order to sort of highlight my points or get across what I'm trying to say, I'm going to be using a lot of sort of terminology from my experience as a vocal coach. It will be explained in a very simplistic, down-to-earth way. I'm not going to get ridiculously technical, but I will explain it in such a way that it makes sense to me, and hopefully it'll make sense to you too. So let's jump into this. First things first, what type of singer is Martin Gore? Now, you get the spectrum from this side to this side, and fundamentally you get emotional singers and then you get technical singers. A technical singer is someone who can really turn it on, and no matter how they're feeling, they have enough technical ability or knowledge to kind of just manipulate their voice to get a certain emotion across. I've seen singers like this before, people who are really technical. It doesn't matter how they can be having a really shitty day, but they can just turn on a really happy sound. Then you get the singers on this side, on the far side of the spectrum, which are what I call emotional singers. And emotional singers are those singers that, if they're in the studio to record a happy vocal, if they're having a bad day, they just cannot detach from their emotions. So to summarize, technical singers who can kind of just almost like actors, and then you get emotional singers. Now, of course, with any scenario, there are polar opposites. You get on the extreme end, you'd get someone who's a very technical singer. And on this extreme end, you'd get someone who's a very emotional singer. The reality and the truth is that most singers do not sit on either side of the far end. Most singers sort of sit somewhere on the scale, somewhere in between. You'll get some singers that are sort of more technical, but they kind of this side, they are to the emotional side. But then you get those singers who are sort of emotional, but they slightly more to the technical side, but more to the emotional side. You get where I'm going with this. And then you get those singers who are kind of in between, 50-50. But that I've found to be very, very rare. I find that most singers are fundamentally, you're fundamentally more a technical singer or more an emotional singer. Now, what type of singer is Martin? Well, if we take it back to Martin's training, remember, and in that video I met Martin Gore myself, link in the description below. I had the opportunity to ask him some questions, and one of the questions I asked was, are you musically schooled? Did you go for training? Did you go for piano lessons? Did you go for singing lessons? And he was like, no. So what I realized there and then is that this, as our friend Gareth Jones has always said, that Martin Gore is this like real musical spirit. He's a real sort of, music is just everything within him, and there's nothing else that this man was born to do except make music. But I would say, and this is just a guess, I would say Martin is more of an emotional singer more than a technical singer. How far, I would say he sits more on the emotional side of the spectrum as opposed to the technical side of the spectrum. That's not to say that he has bad technique or anything. What I do find with his voice is, I think a lot of, the classical musical schooling, which I don't understand and I don't care about either. They might listen to Martin Gore's technique and say, oh, you can hear by the control of the diaphragm or blah, blah, blah. He's not a proper singer. It brings me on to cabaret. Very often when you listen to cabaret singers, we've got a program here in the UK called Strictly Come Dancing, and they have these. It's a great it's not my cup of tea, of course, but it is a great production, and there is tremendous talent. I have a lot of respect for it. But when the dancers dance, they have a live band playing in the background, and these singers and the band members are phenomenal. I mean, they have got better voices than the songs that they cover, and the musicians in that cabaret band are better musicians than the musicians that they're covering, if you understand. So if they're going to do a cover by, let's pick on New Order, the singer's probably going to have a far better voice than Bernard Sumner, and the band are probably going to be more tight. However, as I've always said, you get to a point where you can be so technical and so flawless that it just becomes sterile and bland and dull and boring. And if you've been with me from the start on this channel, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So Martin Gore, to my ears and to my soul, soothes my soul. He really does it for me. I really, really am a huge Martin Gore fan. I suppose you could call me a fanboy. And probably because of that, I'm probably not the best person to give a sort of unbiased opinion. But I'm going to talk about this anyway and just tell you how I feel about his voice, how I feel he uses his voice, and also how his voice has changed over the years, and address some of the comments I've heard about his overuse of vibrato and so on and so on. So we've already sort of established that Martin, as far as I'm concerned, is more of an emotional singer. He's more raw, and I believe in, more recent years he did take vocal coaching, and a lot of you have said that is where it sort of changed his voice, and a lot of you have said his voice is better. There are people now who say that Martin's voice is not as good. So let's look at that. So we've decided he's a fundamentally more emotional singer than a technical singer. But then there is another factor to bring into this, and that is talk about his vocal range. Martin's voice has a lot of color. Color meaning, he has this open round sound, but then he can take it quite high, and he usually uses that high head voice whenever he's kind of singing harmonies with Dave. So Martin's voice has a lot of different colors, and that's what I like about his voice. It's very dynamic. And what I mean by colors is when we talk about the color of a singer's voice, we're talking about the sort of the tonality. Dave Vaughn, I'm going to sort of draw references to him every now and then. Dave Vaughn's voice to me does not have the color that, as much color as what Martin Gore's does. Dave's is very sort of round and direct, and it has more sort of like power. And his voice has changed a lot. That is another subject which I should address in a separate video. But Martin's voice to me is more agile. It's more fluid. It's more light. It's more sort of angelic. And this is why I've always said that the way Martin and Dave's voices work together is brilliant. It's just, Dave's sort of direct, dark, direct baritone, and you've got Martin's light, sort of angelic voice over that, often singing an octave higher or a third or a fifth. It just really, really works. For a more in-depth, detailed analysis, do check out this video, which I released probably about 18 months ago. And in that video, I sort of address the Martin Gore and Dave Garden vocal sounds and how they sort of blend and mesh together. So back onto this video, Martin has... Sorry, guys. Hello?
Hello, Vaughn! Vaughn, George!
Oh, hi, hello, Mrs. Norris.
Yeah, you goddamn son of a bitch! You know I'm calling you! Yeah, you know, where's my goddamn sustain pedal?
Mrs. Norris.
And dust cover for my Yamaha
Mrs. Norris, please. Mrs. Norris, I'm filming at the moment. Can I call you back, please?
You goddamn diddly...
I will call you back, Mrs. Norris, thank you.
You hound, you better
Okay, Mrs. Norris.
You better call me back,
bye.
you son...
Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so where were we? Okay, so Martin, we've established, is a fundamentally more emotional, more than a technical singer. And talking about the sort of range and the color that he uses, his voice is very dynamic. So if we use, there are many examples just off the top of my head. If we think of More Than My Eyes, where Dave goes, "That's all there is, nothing more than you can." On that part, Martin would go, "That's all there is, nothing more than you can feel now. That's all there is." It's very light, it's very easy, it's very flowing. Now, a lot of people say that that is falsetto. That is not falsetto. That is a complete subject on its own, but I often hear vocal coaches as well who often use the terms falsetto and head voice, and they interchangeably use them. And falsetto and head voice are not the same thing. It is a subject that is too deep to go into, but just a brief explanation. When you sing with a head voice, there is chord closure. It means the vocal cords are actually coming together, and there is breath support. When you're singing in falsetto, falsetto. I'm not very good at falsetto, by the way. There's just because I've trained so much my head voice. Falsetto is that is falsetto. Oh, actually, I've got a bit of head voice seeping in there as well. Falsetto is where there's no chord closure. We don't need to go down that rabbit hole, but just understand that falsetto and head voice are not the same thing. And when you hear Martin singing high like that, as in the case of "That's all there is," that is head voice. It is not falsetto. So I just want to make myself clear. Another classic example is when we listen to songs like "My Little Girl." You've got Dave going, "My little girl, drive anywhere, do what you want, I don't care." Then you've got Martin singing the same part, but higher up, 12 notes higher, an octave higher, but he's singing in the high voice. So it's "My little girl, drive anywhere, do what you want, I don't care tonight." Can I just also point out that there is no reverb or effect on this mic. This is just a normal room mic. I'm not trying to sound like Martin. That is very important for me to get across to you. I'm just trying to point out to you how he uses his voice, how I feel it is he uses his voice. Now, okay, so we understand how he does his high sort of head voice when he harmonizes with Dave, but then he's also got his more sort of his normal sort of singing voice, which he utilizes on his solo songs. He also uses his more full singing voice as a harmony. For instance, on the song "Never Let Me Down Again," I've used this demonstration a lot, but I like this demonstration. It's when he goes, "We're flying high, we're watching the world pass us by. Never want to come down, never want to put my feet back down on the ground." You see, it's more of a chest voice. That is kind of like what we call a mixed voice. It's not quite a low chest voice, and it's not quite a high head voice. It's somewhere in between, sometimes what we call mixed voice. But to illustrate, so Martin's got that high, That's all there is. And he's also got that we're flying high, that type of tone or color that he uses for sort of harmonies. But then he's also got his sort of natural singing sort of voice, which is very much in a baritone register. Now, a lot of people have often said that Martin is a tenor, you know, as far as classification goes. I don't agree with that. I think the reason people think Martin is a tenor is because of the range that he sort of typically sings in. If you take songs like, let's take Fragile, like a baby in your arms. That's kind of baritone. But when it gets to the chorus, it's a question of lust, a question of trust, a question of not letting what we've built up crumble to dust. Now, when he gets to that dust, it's actually very light. It's not really belted. He does belt in other songs, which I'll give you an example of just now. But Question of Lust is an example where he sort of starts fragile. It's worth mentioning that Martin's best songs to me are the songs where he almost gives like this tender lullaby approach. It's almost like a mother singing their infant to sleep at night. It's just very, very beautiful. And I'm getting gooseflesh as I say it. This is where Martin's voice works so beautifully, is often you get that powerful electronic sound of Depeche Mode's music, complemented by Martin's soft, vulnerable, tender tone. One of the best examples I can use to demonstrate where Martin uses that tender, beautiful, comforting lullaby approach is on the cover from his Counterfeit One album, the Never Turn Your Back on Mother Earth. I absolutely love that song, and just the way he comes into it. When she's on her best behavior, don't be tempted by her favors. Never turn your back on Mother Earth. That is a beautiful song. Just the way he comes in, when he almost kind of like stumbles over it, but it's kind of like, it's not like a stumble, it's kind of like a graceful, when she's on her best, then it goes, less behavior, more to the head, don't, more to the throat, be tempted by, to the chest first, her favors, and here comes the vibrato, never turn your back on Mother Earth. Now, we're getting onto the vibrato now. So we've already established he has lots of different colors. Let me give you another example of color. When he sings songs like The Sweetest Perfection, if we go onto the album version on Violator, by the way, check out my album review series continuing with Violator coming February. You don't want to miss that one. But The Sweetest Perfection, it starts in the C minor here. The sweetest perfection to call my own, the slightest correction couldn't finally hone. It's just so subdued and intense. Interesting, and we'll get into this on the Violator album review series, is that apparently Dave Gahan supplied some of the backing vocals for that song, Sweetest Perfection. I heard that recently on a podcast. That is not something I'm not sure about, but it is interesting, and apparently it adds that depth to it. Because remember that Dave has a fundamentally lower voice than Martin, and while we're talking about registers, some people often say Martin, as I say, they say he's a tenor. Although he does sing in a tenor register, I think Martin's natural classification is he's not a tenor. As far as I'm concerned, Martin Gore is a baritone, actually. And then Dave Gahan is what we would classify as a low baritone. Now, these vocal classifications are, I don't want to say they're dated explanations, but these classifications of putting singers into a box really comes back from the old school sort of classical training. You know, when you had choirs, you would put bass, tenor, alto, soprano, you know, and then all the different classifications. So, and the reason that has sometimes done a lot of sort of damage to singers is the fact that I've worked with singers. I've seen people before, particularly guys who want to sort of sing. They want to be able to sing higher, but because they were in a choir in school or in church, and they were told that they are a baritone, they therefore feel, I will never be able to reach high notes. However, I have found that although with the traditional classification, they would put you, let's say they would call you a tenor just because you weren't able to sing as low as a baritone, or they'd call you a soprano because you could not sing as high as a or you could not sing as low as a tenor. I have found that the lower your voice is, to me, it's the other way around. The classification of your voice should not be how high you can sing, but how low you can sing. And I'm going to get off the subject now because it's a very deep subject. But what I'm trying to illustrate is I have seen people through, particularly guys who thought they were baritones and could only sing low, through proper vocal technique, being able to learning how to project, learning how to do proper placement, diaphragm support, breath control, and all these things, and resonance. They have been able to sing a lot higher than they ever thought they could and reach much higher tones. So it's worth me saying this if you're getting into singing, is that don't put yourself in a box according to classical classifications. It's a bit outdated, and of course it bears no relevance to the sort of pop and rock field. Anyway, it's easy to go off track. So in that example of the sweetest perfection, you can hear Martin's really sort of like low, deep tone. Now, there is a video up online. I will try and find it and put the link in the description below if I can find it. And it is a video of Martin Gore singing The Sweetest Perfection live on the World Violation Tour. And he's singing it with no band. It's just him and an acoustic guitar, and it sounds fabulous. But what I love about that version that he did on the World Violation Tour is he is singing it in a higher key. So instead of singing it down here, the sweetest perfection to call my own, he sings it up here starting on the F sharp. The sweetest perfection to call my own, the slightest correction couldn't finally home. Now I love that register. It just has more lift. Once again, on the Violator album, the sweetest perfection to call my own. And then on the live version on the World Violation Tour, the sweetest perfection to call my own, the slightest correction. Can you see how that is? It just soars more. However, for the purposes of the album, a lot of the songs on the Violator album, as I will point out on the Violator album review series, a lot of them start on the C minor. Words like violence break the silence, and the same key. I'm waiting for the night to fall. I know that it will save us all. Same key again. The sweetest perfection to call my... You see, a lot of them started sort of in that same, you know, on the C minor. And I think, so, you know, we're going to go down another rabbit hole here. When you are a singer, very often if I'm working with a singer, they will present a song to me and I'll be like, okay, we're going to record the song. Why are you singing it in that key? Then very often when we change the key of the song, it brings out nuances and it brings out that sweet spot in the voice. Now, another subject, of course, as well. But to me personally, the way Martin sang The Sweetest Perfection live in that higher key, that particular key suits his voice better as far as I'm concerned. But however, for the purposes of the Violator record, where it was more about the sound and many other things, they decided to make that creative decision. And also singing it in this key that he does on the record, the sweetest perfection to call my own. It just gives it a more sort of like grounded, rich intensity to it. Whereas if it's but also, you must also remember that this is another subject that is a completely different subject, is when you are going live, singing it in this key, the sweetest perfection to call my own. It just helps it soar, it helps it project better. And this is what I loved about the Mode, is when they go live, they often switch up and change the live versions. Not so much in recent tours, but they definitely used to do that a lot, presenting different versions and keeping the live performance so interesting. It is in that demonstration where I sometimes felt that Martin is singing too low. I sometimes feel that in certain songs he sings so low that it doesn't quite reach his sweet spot. And remember, every voice has its kind of sweet spot. And I just feel, of course, my voice is different to Martin's, but just listen to Martin once again where he goes, the sweetest perfection to call my own, compared to that live version, the sweetest perfection to call my own. But then once again, then you realize it's the compromise. When you're making a record, you need to decide, okay, are we going to go for the point where the voice is at its sweet spot, or are we going to go for the point where it's going to bring it? And I think in Depeche Mode, when it comes to making the records, I feel that when it's a compromise between what's the sweet spot of the voice and what's the sweet spot of the sound, I think the compromise I feel they always lean it in favor of the atmosphere. And another subject that we can really go into in depth on another video. Coming on to the vibrato now. I've heard lots of some people have tried to give explanations as to why it is. I've even heard explanations like he's losing breath support on his diaphragm, and nah, it's nothing to do with that, guys. Martin is getting older, as we all are, and I've found that his voice has changed. I don't dislike his voice any more than I used to. I still love his voice. I'm always excited when I listen to a new Depeche Mode album to hear the Martin songs. I love Martin, and I just wish he would release more solo material. But anyway, on the vibrato thing, briefly, because we can go into a lot of detail here as well. There are fundamentally, let's narrow it down to the two types of vibrato. First of all, vibrato does not come from your diaphragm. Your diaphragm is breath support. It's supporting the note. The vibrato comes from your throat. You can do the demonstration right there as I'm sitting with you here. Fundamentally, with vibrato, there are two types of vibrato that I teach people, and that is pitch variation and pulsing. Now, pitch variation is an example of E. It's kind of where you're sort of alternating on the pitch E. But then there's pulsing, which is E. That's where the vibrato travels on, it's pulsing, but it's on a constant pitch. It's not actually changing pitch. Now, Martin does utilize both of those in his singing. And also just on the subject of his voice changing, as you get older as a singer, they've often found that male voices tend to get better with age. A great example I think of is Billy Joel's "It's 9 o'clock on a Saturday. The regular crowd shuffles in." Anyway, let's not go down a Billy Joel rabbit hole now. But if you listen to him sing it now, he doesn't go, "It's 9 o'clock on a Saturday." He now sings it, "It's 9 o'clock on a Saturday." So he has to transpose it lower because as you get older, you lose range. You also tend to lose some of the subtlety and the agility. And that is why, if you listen to Martin, a classic example on Shake the Disease, he does that, does it better than I do it. But in recent years on the Shake the Disease, which is usually done acoustically, he doesn't go, ooh, it's more, he goes, ah. It's more like an more of an type of sound. And of course, that is an example of where his voice has changed. So he has to manipulate or change the way he delivers it so that it comes across differently. It's just that as you get older, your voice changes, and you need to manipulate or change the mechanics in the way you use your voice to achieve the same pitch. Now, that's very often not difficult, because if you lose the sort of subtlety in the upper registers, even let's say if you were doing something in a falsetto, you might not have the muscle control to do that anymore, so you would have to substitute that sound and use a more sort of head voice type of sound. And I don't want to lose you here, but just understand that as you get older, your voice changes, and there are different techniques that you need to apply in order to get the song across and to get the sound. And that is why I can understand a lot of you are saying like, oh, he doesn't sing the same as he used to. As far as the diaphragm, and I think Martin's voice, if anything, it's gotten stronger. It's definitely gotten more sort of deeper. That is something I find with male voices as we get older. They sort of become fundamentally deeper, and they become sort of richer, and they do tend to lose that subtlety. Just a random example, I was talking about Simon Le Bon the other day, and in fact I should do a video on Simon Le Bon's voice. Simon Le Bon to me was never a great singer. To me he was like the singer of Duran Duran. Duran Duran was more about the sound. Simon's voice was never great to me. I always felt that he was always singing far beyond, he always sounded like he was straining. But indeed, when I've been watching a lot of recent Duran Duran footage, and indeed when he did his Paper Gods tour, I think Simon Le Bon is one of the few vocalists that has really improved with age, and his voice is amazing now, and I think we should definitely do a video dedicated on Simon Le Bon's vocals. So, examples of the sort of extreme vibrato that you guys are talking about. You do hear it on the records. I'm thinking of songs like Overflowing Senses, Heightened Awareness. There's the low. I have heard, just hearsay that apparently Martin has said, I don't know how true this is, it's just hearsay, but apparently Martin has said as he gets older, he's got no control over the vibrato. Now, this is not about me, but I as a singer as well, I find it difficult to sing just flat, and flat meaning direct. Let's take the example of Martin going Overflowing Senses. If he did it just direct, it would be overflowing senses. You see, even there, I've got a bit of vibrato kicking in. But he chooses to go overflowing senses, heightened awareness. That's the way he sings, man. That's his style. Of course, the vibrato has become more extreme and sort of pronounced as he's gotten older. Just on a separate subject, I find this like with my parents, and I find people who are getting older, and especially when you talk to old people, they say that as you get older, your personality becomes more intense, and indeed your voice is part of your personality. And we start off with Martin in the beginning. He was always a very shy kind of guy. He had this light voice, but now he's got a real sort of confident. I think his voice is just... Remember, your voice is an extension of your personality, really. But I understand what you mean about the vibrato being a little bit excessive sometimes, not to my ears, but to some people's, because he has really dialed up the vibrato, especially on live performances. If we think of, where's the revolution? He goes, come on, people, you're letting me down. Yeah, he really puts it in. That's the way he sings, man, and it's not right or worse. As I said, the only thing I can sort of notice on Martin's voice is a slight loss of sort of like subtlety on the top notes, but what he has gained in return is a real sort of depth and a sort of gravitas to his voice. you lose something, you get something back. You can't have it all. But I would personally disagree with people that say his voice has gotten worse. I don't think so. His voice has changed, of course, and that is why you don't sort of notice that. Where that change becomes very apparent is when he's singing sort of older songs. I think with the newer material, when you write new material, you kind of tailor it to your voice. But hey, man, Depeche Mode will be going for, 40 years? So, of course, if he sings songs like, she remembered all the shadows and the dogs that they found, it's going to sound different because he's probably going to go, she remembered all the shadows. And you also find when he does that acoustic session within the live sessions with Peter Gordino, have you noticed how slow the tempos are? It just allows it to sort of breathe. He's matured. They've matured. Things change. Gravitas. It's like well fermented wine. Fermented wine? Yeah, you know what I mean. Another good example to illustrate how Martin's voice has changed and how he uses his voice, how he changes his voice to adapt it to the song, to compensate for the fact that his voice has changed, is if we use the example of the song But Not Tonight. And I was delighted to hear this version in 2013 when I went to see them. And I did get tears in my eyes when I heard this version, when Martin just sang it and Peter played it on the piano. Once again, the tempo is kind of slowed down and it just has a richness to it, which you don't get on the album version. However, I'm always very protective over this song, But Not Tonight. I absolutely love it. I always have. And I don't think it deserves the criticism that it gets from some Depeche Mode fans. Something like that. But notice on the record, he goes, it's kind of an ooh, but it's direct. But when he did it live on the piano, he doesn't go ooh. It's something more like It's more like an oh and an ah, but it's not an ooh, and it just has a more of a it just has gravity and openness to it. Once again. Ooh, ooh. On the record, it's ooh, it's direct. And then live it was it's that kind of Once again, I'm not trying to sound like him. I can't. Obviously my voice box and my mechanics are different. But yeah, that is an example of how he's adjusted and adapted his singing style to suit an older song. Coming on to the way Martin uses his voice, if you watch the previous video I put out on Tears for Fears, how I explained how Curt and Roland use their voices and how people sometimes get it mixed up. Just sort of briefly touching on that. You remember in that video I spoke about, let's use the polar opposite scale again, where you have on this side, you have singers who are what we call lower larynx position singers. Lowering your larynx, your larynx over here. As I said, if I say lower your larynx, you can't do it consciously. But if you yawn, your larynx comes lower. And it's that round, open lower larynx position that Martin utilizes as well. Also, I explained on the polar opposite side of that scale, you get what we call pharyngeal singing, and that's like, Tommy used to walk on the job. He's got that twang, that nasally kind of Axl Rose, and the reason singers use that, I call you, I need you, my heart's on fire. I mean, even Tina Turner uses that a lot. It's pharyngeal. It's apparently up to 500% louder. It cuts through. Of course, using those extreme examples, no singer is completely low larynx or completely pharyngeal. Everyone is somewhere in between. But Martin is more towards the sort of lower larynx position, which gives it that, just think, fragile, which is the same sort of position. It's a larynx position that Roland Orzabal or Curt Smith or Dave Vaughn would use. There are lots of examples. I'm just going to quickly throw in a random one here. Let's talk about Morrissey. I'm the sun, I'm the air. That is a lower larynx position, but he's not as far down the... He's a bit more to the sort of pharyngeal side. Of a shyness that is criminally vulgar. So when I go this, when I go like this, I'm indicating pharyngeal, and when I go this way, I'm indicating larynx. So with Moby, Morrissey, it's I'm the sun, I'm the air. Of a shyness that is criminally vulgar, I'm a summoner of nothing in particular. Please shut your mouth, how can you say I go about things the wrong way? I am human and Why are we talking about Morrissey? Just because it's just to sort of demonstrate how your voice is never set on the spectrum. It's just that you're either more here or more there. And Martin is more on the sort of lower larynx position. Fragile like a baby in your arms. But even when he goes into his sort of pharyngeal register, he backs off the intensity and it's softer. Let's not turn this into a vocal tuition lesson. And now, my friend, it's up to you. Please leave your comments in the description below. What do you think of Martin Gore's voice? Do you agree with me? Anything you want to say about Martin's voice, the vibrato? Does it put you off? Do you like it more? How has Martin's voice changed? What do you think? Let me know. And that brings this video to a close. Once again, a very, very long video. And once again, man, if this is your first time to my channel, I hope you enjoyed this. Please hit the subscribe button, hit the like, it helps me a lot, and join this community. I'm sure if you're one of those people who likes 3-minute YouTube videos, I've probably lost you. But remember, guys, I make no apologies for the fact that my videos are very passionate, very in-depth, and if you're one of those people who have a 5-minute concentration span, this is not the channel for you, and I make no apology for that. But if you've enjoyed this and you've just come here, please hit the subscribe button and join the community. Also jump on board and join the Vaughn George Facebook group. The Vaughn George Facebook group is kind of a forum group. It's where we can discuss the topics on this channel in a sort of friendly, sort of like a group environment. And it is a really, really great group. So jump on there and, make yourself known and ask, join the community. Also, guys, as you know, there are no sponsors for these videos, but as I say, remember that you can support this channel by purchasing this original Depeche Mode artwork here. These are original poster prints by the artist Brian Griffin, who actually did the first 5 Depeche Mode album covers. And this is the only channel in the world, or only place in the world, where you can actually buy these. Just trying to get it in focus. But yeah, to get more information, all the information how you can obtain those is in the description below. You can go to www.vaughngeorge.com. If you want to support this channel and go a bit deeper and also join in on secret sort of like Zoom chats and live streams, then check out my Patreon page and you can join the community there. The Patreon is a very, very close-knit community, and yeah, it's very sort of like intimate, and I would love you to consider joining there, and it's a great way to support the channel. Also, we are coming to the end of our Indiegogo crowdfunding campaign for our friend Gareth Jones, who's releasing his debut album Electrogenetic on vinyl. You can go over to that campaign if you want to buy Gareth Jones's album. We are funding it so that we can get it printed on vinyl. My label, Agro Monkey Records, will handle the distribution. And if you want to get involved, the link is below. There's only a few days left, so don't miss out. Also, Gareth Jones is selling these poster cards, which you can get directly from his Bandcamp page. They are all hand-painted, and he will send this to you directly to your door. So, I mean, it's pretty cool. When I got this and I went, hey man, I just received a postcard from Gareth Jones. My friends, I want to thank you so much for your support as always. I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Be safe, take care, and thank you as always. Adios.